Okay, let's talk about presentations. My training is on one-on-one presentations. And if you've got the ability to take notes, do it. If you need to borrow a pen, make sure you borrow a pen and paper from somebody next to you. But one-on-one presentations are so important in doing well in ACN. Who here would like to have, on any given night, 50 people out there doing presentations on your team? Who'd like to have that? Well, how does that happen? How does that happen? Well, let's go back to the question, why is it important for you to start giving one-on-one presentations as soon as you achieve the ETT position? And the answer is right there. Write that down. Duplication. What are the three most important words in ACN? Lead by example. Say it again. Lead by example. If you do something, your team is going to do it. If you do not do something, your team is not going to do that. Really simple philosophy. And I'll tell you a story. We had two people on our team who got started in 1998, and they were doing very well financially. They had great jobs. They had all the ability to present. But when they got started, what I told them was, and the gentleman who brought them in, we said, hey, listen, all you have to do is you get people in front of us. We'll do all the presentations for you. We'll do all the training for you. We answer all the questions for you. And we never really talked about when they hit ETT to start presenting. So they had been in the business for 1 year. And guess what position they were in ACN? After 1 year, they were ETT. And so Ed, who was their upline, he and I said, okay, well, you know what? I think we made a mistake. They only have one other presenter on their whole team, and it's because they're not presenting. So we said, okay, we've got to tell them how important it is for them to start presenting. And so, they had become dependent upon us. You know what happens when a baby bird is born, hatched out of the egg? What happens if the bird doesn't get out of the nest fast enough? It's never able to fly. Same thing in ACN. What we had done is by not getting them out of the nest, we'd caused a situation where they were not able to fully develop. And so, it's kind of like, it was the same thing as giving candy. If you give candy to a 4-year-old every single day, and then all of a sudden one day you say, no candy, what's the 4-year-old going to do? Tantrum, go crazy. So we knew we had to go through that process with these two. And we thought, okay, they're either going to get very upset and quit, or they're going to get very upset and start presenting and really have a chance to win. And so we gave them the bad news, and what do you think they did? They got very angry, and then they started presenting. And because they started presenting, what did people on their team do? They started presenting. And what do you think happened within 60 days? Team coordinator within 60 days. They had something back then called the Eagles Club, which was much harder than President's Club, and they were Eagles Club team coordinators for 6 quarters in a row. And it all came back to them just giving presentations, starting with one-on-one presentations. Now, by the way, let me ask a question here. Who here has ever given at least one-on-one presentation in ACN? All right. For those of you who didn't raise your hands, if you're not yet ETT, what's your goal leaving today? What's the saying in ACN? Don't sleep until you are ETT. And then, obviously, what I'd like you to do is take the information you learned from this training and start presenting. And if you've never given a presentation before, hopefully 28 minutes from now, you're going to have all of the keys written down and internalized in order for you to start presenting. Does that sound good? Yes. All right. So first thing, coming into a presentation, it's important to be prepared. So what does that mean? You need to have the 1 through 10 presentation document. You need a DVD. You need flyers for the next events. So whatever the next events are. So for example, in a lot of your marketplaces, there is a weekly meeting and a Saturday training. Whatever's happening within the next week, it's important to bring flyers for those events. So let me ask you a question. What is the most important facet of the actual 1 through 10 presentation? So when you're actually talking, when you're going from number 1 to number 10, what is the most important focal point there for you? I'd say brevity. Write that down. Write down brevity. And what is that? That's finishing it quickly. Who here would like to have somebody join your team? And we all know these people who could join your team and they just snap their fingers and all of a sudden 100 people would join the team. Who'd like to have somebody like that? Well, somebody like that who's got a lot of personal power, who's got a lot of influence, are these people, and they've had success in business and life, are these people typically busy or not too busy? They're very busy. They're busy people. So what would happen if you sat down with a busy person and from number 1 to number 10, just from 1 to 10, you took 45 or more minutes? What kind of message are you sending that person, both at the conscious and the subconscious level? I mean, what are they thinking? Their subconscious is saying, man, I don't know, I'm really busy. If just this one-on-one took 45 minutes or an hour or more, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do this. And you could lose a lot of people. So what number should we be focusing on? From number 1 to number 10, how many minutes? 12 minutes. Write that down. 12 minutes. Short and sweet and to the point. And by the way, what percentage of information do people internalize and pick up on the first time that they hear or see anything? It's only 10%. So if you're going 12 minutes, if they're only going to pick up on about a minute of that anyways, why would you go 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes? Doesn't make sense, does it? So keep your presentations as short as possible. But what's the mission? What's your mission when you sit down with somebody to do a presentation? What's the goal of the presentation? What is it? Who says it's to extract $495 from them? Good. It's not the goal. The goal is just to get them to the next event. And if you understand this, this can make all of the difference in your ACN business. If you get somebody, if you sit down with somebody, you do a one-on-one, or if you do a home meeting for them, a smaller meeting, and then from the smaller meeting, you get them to a bigger event, to a weekly event, or a Saturday training. What percentage of people that show up at event number 1 and then event number 2, what percentage of those people statistically will sign up on your team? 80%. Write that down. And that number is huge. And of course, are we going to lose people along the way if we don't follow up correctly from 1 to 2? Yes or no? Of course. But if you can just get people from number 1 to event number 2, there's an 80, if you just fill the seats at event number 2, 80% probability they will show up. So what should your whole focus and mission be from meeting them the first time? Just getting them to the next event. That's it. That's the number 1 priority, the number 1 focus. And if you're just starting to present for the first time, if your first presentation is going to be this week, doesn't that take all the pressure off? I mean, all you have to do is get good at talking to them a little bit, making friends, going over a little bit of information, and just promoting the next event. Now, are you still going to ask them if they want to join the team afterwards? Sure. But your whole mission is not necessarily to Get them to sign up right then and there. You let the process do that for you. Raise your hand if you understand this. Okay. So, in meeting with your prospect, what's far more important than covering the 1 through 10? And you know what? People have asked me, I've had lots of questions. 50 people have asked me so far. Well, you know, now we've got a new video that's 11 minutes long, and it's the 1 through 10. So people are asking me, what should I do? What should I do? You know, should we, at PBRs or one-on-one, should we play that video instead of talk? Should we do that? You know, how should we do it? And, you know, Mr. Mike Kupas and I are on the same page. We both agree this is a people business. Whenever possible, a person should be talking. But if somebody's a beginning ETT, if somebody is just starting in business, they don't have upline support, can you just put in that video 1 to 10 in 11 minutes? Yes or no? Yes. So don't worry about that. There's something that is far more important than just the 1 through 10. I mean, the 1 through 10 in significance is down here. What's 10 times more important? It's building rapport. It's building rapport. What kind of business are we in? We're in the people business. We're not primarily in the telecom business. We're not primarily in the energy business. We're in the people business. People will follow people that they like. That they like. So what's building rapport? What is that? That's simply making friends with people, taking an interest in other people. That's the most important thing that we can possibly do here in ACN. That's the most important thing you can do when you start a presentation. Now, there's two kinds of rapport. Let's talk about rapport. So there's mirroring. So, I mean, this is physical rapport. There's mirroring and there's speed of speech. But let's talk about mirroring. And I need to ask a favor of somebody. Is Bruce Doyle here? Can Bruce Doyle come on up? Give Bruce a big round of applause. New team coordinator, Bruce Doyle. So what is mirroring? What is mirroring? Well, have you ever gone into a coffee shop? And let's say you see two women who are sitting at a table, and they're, you know, one sitting here, one sitting here. They're leaning into each other, and they're all talking really excited. There's all this positive energy coming from that conversation. Who's seen something like that? So mirroring. So and what they did not even know they were doing is that they were mirroring, and there was instant rapport going on there. So let's talk about physical rapport. Come over here, man. Okay, so let's say Bruce is somebody to whom you're doing a presentation. So you're doing a one-on-one presentation, and more important than the presentation's building rapport. So you want to build a relationship with him as quick as you possibly can, as fast as you possibly can. So one of the things that we do is we do mirroring. And all that means is you pretend there's a mirror right here, and as you're talking to him, you simply mirror his body language, right? Does that make sense? I'm not going to do something like that, right? So as you talk to him, and so what kind of message do you send to the person at a subconscious level when you employ mirroring? Hey, I am like you. I am taking an interest in you. And people like people who are just like them. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? So mirroring, is this a simple concept? And obviously don't do anything ridiculous. Right? But mirroring is very important. What was that again? A big thank you to Bruce Doyle, team coordinator. So, where does mirroring come from? It comes from neuro-linguistic programming, from NLP. Who is the gentleman who who first really brought that to the forefront in society? It was Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins. And it's amazing, you know. Larry King Live. Larry King is a gentleman, CNN in the United States. He does interviews. And I was watching an interview once with Tony Robbins, and he does all this without even thinking about it. And what does Larry King do when he's doing an interview? Well, he leans all the way in. And so Tony Robbins was there, and they were talking. And just naturally, Tony was mirroring what Larry King was doing. And there was all this positive energy. And because Tony Robbins was sending the right signals to Larry King, what kind of questions do you think Larry King was asking? More beneficial, positive questions or less? More. It's fantastic. So that's one thing that you can do. Also, physical rapport. Let's talk about speed of speech. If you sit down with somebody and they're the kind of person that talks a little bit more slowly, they're a little bit more methodical. And if you sit down, you're talking 100 miles a minute. What's going to happen? You're going to lose them. True? Because all they're thinking of is, man, this person's not like me. They're talking a mile a minute. This person seems pretty slick. They're just going. You know, it's the same thing. Country people sometimes are a little bit slower. They talk more slowly. City people talk a little bit more quickly. You know, we built a team in Texas. We built a team in Texas in 2002 and went out to Texas. It was a desert area. There was 180,000 people, nobody else around, and everybody talked so slowly. I was going crazy. And I had to force myself to talk a lot more slowly. And people still said I was talking too fast. But if I hadn't made the effort, who knows how many people I would not have gotten through to. Because, you know, why do we do this? Right? We do this for two reasons. Number one, build relationships. Most important, number two, we want to bring people's walls down. Because the only way you're going to build a relationship, a good relationship, is if you're good at getting people's walls down. We call it, you know, breaking the ice. Right? If people's walls are up, it's very hard to get through to them. If their walls are down, you can get through to them. Who here believes that ACN is the best business that you have ever seen or will ever see in your lifetime? Who thinks that most people should also, in theory, see ACN as a good business? Well, the number one reason why people don't see ACN as a good business isn't because it's a good business. It's because their walls are up during the presentation. It's because you haven't spent enough time bringing down people's walls. Does that make sense? So one thing you can do is you can employ mirroring and speed of speech. The second thing that we can do is we could focus on the second kind of rapport, which is personality or psychological rapport. Let's go through the personality types. So there's 4 personality types in general out there. There's urchins, whales, dolphins, and sharks. And, you know, all of us have a little bit of each of these inside of us in our personalities. But let me go through these 4. So what's an urchin? An urchin tends to be analytical, information-oriented, asks tons of questions, wants to get things right, very well organized. Methodical, unemotional in decision-making. Who here would say that you lead primarily with the urchin personality type? Please stand up. If you lead with urchin. Round of applause. Whale personality type. Whales want to help others. They put other people first. They're easygoing, they're relaxed, agreeable, excellent listening skills. If you think that you lead with whale personality type, please stand. Big round of applause. Okay, let's talk about sharks. Sharks tend to be goal-oriented, serious. They don't get too emotional. They're motivational, natural leadership skills, money motivated. If you feel you lead with shark personality type, please stand. All right, let's talk about dolphins. Dolphins like being the center of attention. They love people. They're creative. They're colorful. They usually have different colored hair. They have great sense of humor, free spirits. They value freedom. Are they typically the most well-organized? No. Do they sometimes show up late for meetings? Who here would say that you lead with dolphin personality? So sharks and urchins, they focus on factual information first. Dolphins and whales are emotion first. Sharks and dolphins think, talk, and move quickly. Urchins and whales think, talk, and move a little bit more slowly. And by the way, we're a combination of all of these four. And if some of you have taken these personality profile tests and see where you are, and some people are actually pretty even through them. But let me ask you a question. Which one of these here has the best chance of doing well in ACN? Who says urchins, whales, sharks, dolphins? All right, that's good. That's good. None of the above, none of them has a competitive advantage over anyone. Why is this important? Why is this exercise important here? What's the number one mistake people make in ACN and in life? We assume that people are just like us. We assume people are just like us. That is one of the biggest mistakes that you can make. Never assume that people's dreams and goals are like your dreams and goals, that their desires, that their work ethic, that what they want to do, what they want to get out of life. Most people, at least 3/4 of the people out there, are unlike you in many ways, but it's really important. When you sit down with somebody, chances are they're not going to be like you. Is that important to know? So if you want to get through to somebody, if you want to bring their walls down, then what do you have to do? In building rapport, you have to take an interest in them. In ACN, it's only the people who take a true and genuine interest in other people. People who put other people first. Those are the people who win in ACN. So what does that mean? If you're talking to somebody and it's evident that they are a shark personality type, then what do you have to do? It's important that you talk to them, you give them the information that they need to get through to them, shark to shark. Same thing dolphin, same thing urchin, same thing whale. How do you find out what somebody's personality profile is? Ask them questions. Take an interest in them. So when you sit down with somebody, when you're doing a one-on-one presentation, you ask question. Take an interest in them. Do you realize outside of these walls, in real life out there, do you realize how few people take a genuine and sincere interest in others? It hardly ever happens. In ACN, we need to make our number one job making people feel good, taking an interest in them. And I'm not talking about mirroring and doing all this just to do it, just for a selfish gain. I'm talking about doing this because you truly have an interest in them. What's the number one thing you could do to find out somebody's passion in life and what personality profile they are? Ask them the reason why. How do you do that? Let's say I'm sitting down with Lynn. I ask Lynn, hey, where do you want to be 5 years from now? What are your big goals in life? What are your dreams? If we got money as an issue out of the way, well, where would you see yourself? What would you do with your time? Who can do that? What happens if Lynn says something like, well, you know what? I got my dream house, my dream car. I got everything the way it's all set up. I know what I want to do. I want to be able to make 3 times as much as I'm making. What personality type would you say he is? Which one? Shark. What if he said, I just want total freedom. I hate working a job. I just want to be able to travel the world and have fun. What if he said, I want to start a nonprofit. I want to give back to the community. Does that make sense? Right? So what we end up doing is we end up tailoring the 1 through 10 to our prospect. We take an interest in them. We start talking about them. We find out what their passion is, and during the 1 through 10, we can talk about it. Let's say that Lynn wants to be able to travel the world. We talk about this being able to, an ACN, being able to end up in him traveling the world if he puts in the effort, right? Okay, so I'm not going to go too much into this. What's the best defense against rotten apples? The DVD, and it was already covered in this training how important it is to actually have somebody have a DVD in their hands after every presentation. That will increase by a factor of 5 the number of people who come from presentation number 1 to presentation number 2. Whose responsibility is it to make sure that you always have enough DVDs at $3 or $4 a piece, whatever it is, in order to make sure every person who sees a presentation gets one? Whose responsibility is it? Perfect, it's yours. So finally, ETTs. How many presentations should an ETT do every day to be successful, in my opinion? What do you think? ETT, right? Maybe that's 5, 10, 15 minutes building rapport, and then the 12 minutes or less promoting for the next event. One time, write that down, 1 a day. I'm telling you, if you're an ETT in here, and if you can put together 30 days in a row of a one-on-one presentation, your business will be booming a month from now. If you're an ETL, what should your goal be? ETL, what do you think? 2 per day. 2 per day. Team coordinator, what do you think? 4 or more, as many as you can. And by the way, almost everybody here is part-time ACN. Almost everybody here has a full-time job. Are there enough hours in the day to do these presentations? How many hours are there in a week? 168. Who here sleeps 8 hours a night? Nobody sleeps 8 hours a night. But if you did, that'd be 56 hours. That leaves 112 hours. If you have a 40-hour-a-week job, that leaves 72 hours. Can you, if you're an ETT, if you're just beginning here, can you fit one presentation into 10 hours a day? Is there enough time in the day? Free time. Raise your hand if you say yes. So how do we become great at ACN? How do you become great in ACN? You focus on giving lots of presentations. 1 a day, 2 a day, 4 or more a day. How is it that Pawada and Deborah and Glenn McCulloch, how do they get to number 1, number 2 TCs? Presentations, presentations, presentations. Obviously, there's other stuff to do, but they prioritize giving presentations, lots of presentations. One-on-one presentations, bigger presentations. When you're ETL, a lot of your presentations can be home meetings where you make things more efficient because 3, 5, 10 people at one time. Does that make sense to everybody? Margaret, I'll tell you one more story. Margaret and Victor, they became, they're team coordinators in Hungary. They're now RDs, actually. They're really close to RVP. They had 200 people join their team in a 2-week period just before the international training event in Cologne. I asked him, I brought him up on stage in Cologne in front of 12,000 people. I said, Margaret and Victor, I said, how many people, or how many presentations are you doing today? And he was full-time. Guess what he said? 10 to 20 a day. 10 to 20, that's crazy, isn't it? How would you like to have one person like that on your team? Because that's what it's really about. It's not about you doing all those presentations. It's about you having people like that on your team who are going to work way harder than you. Who wants that? And how does that happen? By being an ETT, focusing on one presentation per day. Can we do that? And I'll finish off with one last story. How bad are you going to be during your first presentation? How do you think my first presentation was? Well, I turned red. I was sweating. I was shaking. And there was one person there. I had never done any kind of presentation in my life. It was horrible. But how do you think the second presentation was? And the third? How good would you be if you had done after your 10th presentation? Or your 20th? Or your 50th? Or 100th? If you did one presentation a day for a year, how many presentations is that? 365. How good would you be at presentations after that? Well, I'll tell you what. I started in ACN in 97. I'll tell you, we moved here in 2005. We moved up to Sunshine Coast in 2005. And I remember I was doing a presentation. It was 3 a.m. here, and it was 10 a.m. in Los Angeles. I was doing an over-the-phone presentation, and I had my headset on, and I was in the downstairs bedroom. Andrea was asleep upstairs, and I was really tired. And I was leaning against, I had all these business people from California on the phone, and I was sitting on the bed. I was leaning back against the bed. I started doing the presentation, and who's ever talked on the phone really tired with your eyes closed? Who's ever done that? So I was going through the numbers. I was, number 1, number 2, number 3, and I was feeling really relaxed. Number 4, number 5, and then I fell asleep. And all of a sudden, I woke up, and I was in the middle of number 7, and then my heart started racing. I was freaking out at number 8, number 9, number 10, and finished up the call, and no idea what happened. And so I called the guy who had all the people on. I said, well, how was it? How was it? I was expecting the worst. He said, it was great. You sound a little bit tired, but other than that, it was fantastic. Now, who here would like to get so good at presentations that you can do them in your sleep? That's only going to happen if you focus on the ETT one a day, one after one after one after one after one, and you'll see that magic will happen after that. Can we focus on that? Can we focus on the little things right now to have the big things over time? And again, this is only going to happen if you're here a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now. Because what's going to happen over the next few years? That's right. What is it? One more time? Thank you very much.